We're giving you a look at a tangible window into God's grace today. That window, by the way, is a little boy, a Southeastern Fertility baby named Mason Ray. I'm Mark Mellinger. This is Hope, Faith, and Infertility, a podcast from Southeastern Fertility in Knoxville, Tennessee. Whitney and Jason East are my guests today, along with Mason, their son. They've got a great story, so we're going to walk you through that. By the way, if you have any questions about what we do at Southeastern, just go to our website, southeasternfertility.org. Again, that's southeasternfertility.org. You guys do have, I know, such a terrific story. So let's talk about, when you first got together and got married, how you thought your family was going to take shape.
Well, when we got married, Jason already had two boys. They were 5 and 7 when I came into the picture. How old were they? Like 10 and 12 when we got married?
Yeah, I think so.
And so we were already raising boys and going to baseball and football and doing all those things. And we were kind of just set with that for a while before we even started talking about having our own.
Did you think you were done, Jason?
And because of that, I had the SNP, as they call it, so that was something that we had in my past anyway too. So fast forward to what, 2019 or 2020?
2019, July of 2019, I was in Dallas, Texas, at a Tony Robbins event with his oldest son, and I said, "Oh, it's time." It's time to have a baby.
Now, what made you think it was time then?
Well, when you go to a Tony Robbins event, he takes you through lots of mindset exercises and really digging deep into what you really want out of life and what you want your life to look like. And I had been so busy keeping myself busy that I had never taken time to say, what are we doing with our life? I had the career thing going on, but I didn't have, the life piece of it. And I mean, God just downloaded it immediately. And I called Jason that night and said, we got to talk.
So Jason, what did you think of this? You probably thought, I'm done with this part of my life. And then you're hearing this from your wife.
Well, she and I had talked about it, and I think it's something that we wanted to do, but to her point, we continued to kind of, put it on the back burner and things like that. So when she told me that, I said, well, let's talk about what our options are. And so we went to see a urologist, and they were able to do a scan and look at the amount of scar tissue, because, it had been 15 years or so, since I had my procedure. And they told us they would grade us on a scale of A, B, C, and D, with A being the highest possibility of a vasectomy reversal being successful, and D being the worst. And unfortunately, on the amount of scar tissue, they rated us a D, which was a 20 to 30% chance of that being successful. And so, we wanted to talk about different options. And so that's when, someone referred us to Southeastern and said, they're right here. You don't have to drive to Nashville. They are here in town. And
well, I want to time out because we've missed a step too. We talked about having kids before we got married. So when Jason said he was done with that phase of his life, that was in the first marriage. When we got married, he did say that when I was ready, when I knew that it was time, then he was willing. So it didn't completely blindside him when I told him that in July of 2019. We hadn't talked about it in 4 or 5 years. And we'd gone through a rough patch in our marriage too the year before at a different Tony Robbins event. And we'd really been working for about a year on ourselves and on our marriage to make sure that we were going to stick. We want the baby to stick, right? But we want our marriage to stick too. So we've been working for about a year to make sure that we were going to be ready to take the next step.
And this is a really key point. I'm really so glad that you made that point, Whitney. And I love your honesty, because if a marriage isn't stable or has problems already, you don't want to bring children into that marriage. Good. It's a credit to both of you for saying we need to get this thing right and make sure we're on solid ground before we bring any children into this, because yeah, troubled marriages aren't just strains on you, they're strains on the kids too.
Yeah.
Well, and
Wow, you
Monica,
really went to a place of humility, didn't you?
our relationship has never been normal. I mean, I tell people ask all the time, they say, where do you live? And I said, well, it depends on the day. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, my wife lives in Knoxville. And so we have a house there, and I have 2 kids from a previous marriage. And so I spend almost every weekend in Rome, Georgia. And then, oh, by the way, I run a company. It's in Brooksville, Florida. And their eyes kind of glaze over and they're like, so where do you stay? And I'm like, everywhere. So we've never had that traditional, we live together full time, we both go to work and we see each other at night. And so, that in and of itself created some challenges. And those and some other obstacles were things that we, had to or needed to overcome. The other thing that we started thinking about is, I know I've got really boyish good looks. I know that. But I'm 10 years older than Whitney. So, time was not exactly on our side as it is. I'm that crazy guy now that's going to show up for baseball games and they're going to be like, oh, you brought your grandpa with you, but perfectly fine with that. It's great. So.
I love it. Well, and yeah, and you guys are. I mean, you're a busy couple. So, Jason, you're running your own business. Whitney is having great success. I know in real estate. You were named one of Knoxville's 40 under 40. So, congratulations on that. You had to figure that piece out too, right? How's this going to work when we're both so busy?
We did, and one thing that we decided. One thing that helped us in our marriage and in our lives is in 2018, we both quit drinking alcohol. And that is really what saved our marriage. And we worked really, really hard on our marriage and on ourselves. And then, when I decided it was time for kids in 2019, I started making moves then to put some of my real estate on autopilot. And I hired a lady that could run my office. And I stepped back from some of the other things that I was doing. And then, in 21, when we started working with y'all so much, I stepped back even further to where I'm not involved in the day-to-day activities anymore. And I kind of just supervise more than being super hands-on all day, every day, which has given me the time to, stay home and raise Mason and to be with him all day, every day, and still have my stuff going on. I have an outlet. I can go be an adult if I want to, but also just take him to work with me and just tote him around in my purse.
Well, I think this whole conversation put a new outlook on life. Whitney was invested pretty heavily in a mentorship where they take people that own their own businesses and stuff, and it's all about how do I be a leader and how do I do this. And if you go to one of those events, which I was fortunate enough to go with her, it's basically people talking about how do I build my empire? How do I build my empire? How do I grow? How do I generate more revenue? In the last event that we went to, everybody takes a turn in the barrel and you tell your story and your vision. And then other people basically give you very candid and hard constructive criticism. And based on her comments, we all agreed that her vision wasn't to grow her business empire. Her vision was to become a mom. And so right then and there, we folded the tent and said, we're done. This is what we needed out of this session. And it was game on from then. And it was, step by step, going through the process. Whitney is deathly afraid of needles. And so when you have to take a couple of 100 shots, going through a process, it's not mentally the easiest thing to prepare for. But that's how we began our journey. The conversations about what should be when we left that session in August of 2020, we were both extremely clear about this is what we want. Now is when we want it, and let's really get moving forward.
Boy, yeah, then this is so interesting. Yeah, and obviously, the needles that you were referring to, most people who are listening to this will understand that refers to the IVF process and all the shots that you have to go through with that. I just can't imagine what this was like. I mean, this is a lot of stuff. This is refocusing yourself on your marriage, totally quitting alcohol, recommitting yourself to chasing your dream of being a mom rather than being a parent again, in your case for Jason, instead of focusing primarily on your business, and then deciding you're going to go down the road of IVF, even though Whitney's deathly afraid of needles. What were your conversations with God like during this time? I mean, did your faith play a role in all this?
Huge. We had the opportunity to switch churches and go to my home church. We'd been at a different church, and then we lived in Georgia for a while, and so we floated churches. So when we got super serious about IVF, we joined my home church, where my family's gone since before. I mean, my great grandparents went there, and we had a pastor that was super involved and really led the whole congregation in a strong walk. And we were going all the time. We signed up for different stuff. Even this weekend, I'm on a committee to run the benefit auction to raise money for the youth group, even though Mason's not in the youth group yet. We're still going for it. And we also took some time. Jason did a Bible study on a book a day or a verse a day, or how was it? It's getting through the Bible in a whole year. So he took time out of his personal life to dig into that. And I didn't do anything super structured, but we started listening to the Message on XM. So we cut out all the other trash music, and we were just listening to Christian radio stations. And I mean, what else did we do?
Well, that's a lot right there.
We also just started praying before we eat. We would pray if everybody got together or whatever, but we just started praying every time we ate together. We'd bless the food, and we'd pray for the baby. We'd pray for the process. We'd pray for all the things that we were going through, and we would pray together. We would go to the altar and pray together, and just all of those little things just added up to every single day. It was a lot.
Yeah, little faith steps that you were building in along the way, and God does. He works through those. So, by the way, Mason is being, for those of you who are just listening and not seeing the video version, you wouldn't even know Mason is part of the podcast. But he is just he's smiling great. He's been so quiet and being such a good boy, and he's only a few months old. So, man, you guys definitely have a good baby. Talk about what the process was like with us, and then finally realizing your dream of giving birth to him.
Well, for me, like Jason said, I was terrified of needles. And so going through the whole process, I think that was one of the things that I'd kind of kept putting off, because I didn't want to go through all the needles and all the shots and all the blood draws and all the processes. And I was scared. And the first time we went to the appointment, I cried the whole time we were there. And then we went to the second appointment, and I boo-hooed. I mean, in front of Dr. Keenan and Linda and everybody. And then we got in the truck, and I mean, I was a wreck. And Jason, because we are very business minded in this family, and we have lots of business conversations. Jason sat me down and said, I think it was in the middle of our second appointment, he said, look, when you go into a house, you know exactly what needs to be done to fix it, to get to your vision, to get to where you want it to be, to get to the right end product. That's what these people do. They've got a process. They see it how, the facts. They don't have the emotional stuff going on. And you just need to trust them that they've done this hundreds of times and that they know what they're doing. And it's just like when you walk into a house. It's just like when he walks into a business. He just sees the things that needs to be done. And if you'll just follow the process, it'll make everybody's life a lot easier. And that calmed me down so much, to say that I don't have a clue what's going on. I don't know what the next step is. I'm learning a lot of new words and vocabulary phrases, and they don't mean anything to me, but they do to y'all, and you really know what's going on to be able to get us the result that we want.
That is, oh man, it's so good, and I love sort of tracing the arc of your marriage. How you go from sort of a trouble spot to now years later, you can have conversations like that where you're building each other up. So I mean, Jason, doesn't sound like you were really apprehensive at all during the process. It sounds like you were pretty ready to go with this.
He just had one needle. It wasn't a big deal.
Are you afraid of needles too?
It was a big one.
No, not at all. I'm the guy that, I'm the guy when they draw blood, I want to watch, I want to see the stick, I want to talk to them about it. No, needles don't bother me. So it was kind of ironic that she's the one that had to endure that. But the biggest thing for me was, obviously having never done this before, we had tons of questions, and there wasn't a question that was asked that we didn't get answered. Whitney mentioned blood draws earlier. Sherry in the lab, found a process that calmed Whitney down by taking a warm washcloth and putting on her hand, obviously, to help her what she needed to do, but maybe give Whitney one for her, found out what that process was. And it gave Whitney that calm and comforting feeling and stuff like that. And, we embraced the whole process. I mean, I don't know if you've seen any of our Facebook posts, but on transfer day, I carried a pineapple with me everywhere we went. I mean, we strapped it in the seatbelt in the vehicle, and we went in the restaurant, and it had its own little silverware and stuff on the table. And, I almost cried when Whitney chopped its head off to eat it, at the end. But, we embraced the whole process. And for me, that was kind of a big step, because I used to be the guy that was very buttoned up and prim and proper, and no, I'm not doing that childish stuff and things like that. It was great for us. And one of the biggest moments for me personally, and I know for Whitney too, before we went into transfer, Dr. Keenan looked at us and he said, "Would you like for me to have prayer with you guys?" And so to be involved in this process and on a journey with people, and for them to give us that option really, really meant a lot to us.
I think he prayed before the egg retrieval too. Egg retrieval
but
I'm sure he did. Yep.
But to have him ask us if that's something we would like to do and give us that option was a big deal for us. And oh my gosh, I mean, I can't tell you, what it's meant to us. But so we went through the transfer process, and you want to tell them about like when we found out and stuff like that?
We did the transfer, and then I basically just hung out at the house for a week or so. I don't remember how long now.
Yeah.
And we went and had our pregnancy test done. To this day, I have not peed on a stick. Like, I have not done a pregnancy test outside of what y'all did. So we went and had our pregnancy test, and we were on our way to a marriage retreat with our church going to Gatlinburg, and we just entered right there at Pigeon Forge, where it's got the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, where that sign is. We had just driven in through there, and it's all pretty, and it's just a perfect spring day. And it was March 3rd, wasn't it? And Linda called and said, "Congratulations, baby's stuck, you're pregnant." And, oh, I'm gonna cry just thinking about it now. But we cried, and we went to dinner, and we were so excited. And we already had that weekend planned as a getaway celebration, but we didn't know how much we were going to be getting away and celebrating. It was awesome. It was so awesome.
Ah, man, I love it. Well, what was it like? Tell me about Mason, having him when he arrived, and what kind of a baby he is. He's obviously a really, really, really good baby, and we've also seen him here in the office. You guys were kind enough to bring him by. So, beautiful kid. Jason says a future baseball player, which, hey, I'm right there with you. I was a baseball guy, and my son played baseball as well.
No.
He was great. From the moment we brought him home, 4 to 5 hours sleeping.
Keep going.
He slept 4 to 5 hours, every night since we brought him home. Really good baby, really good temperament. We've told people about that, and people are like, yeah, that's good for you guys, but we kind of hate you a little bit now too, because you had such a good experience. But so far so good. Now, we're not quite to the teething stage yet, so I'm sure a little bit of fussiness and agitation's coming, but we'll deal with it, won't we, buddy?
Ah, man, what a great looking kid. Whitney, this is your dream. I mean, tell me what it feels like.
It's wonderful. And I'm so glad I've got into a place where I can balance, well, learning to balance, working, but most importantly, being a mom and taking him wherever I need to go. And it's amazing. I was afraid that, people would say, you can't bring your baby here. You can't do this. You can't do that. And I haven't found anywhere where I was super uncomfortable taking him or where he was a drag on the environment. So
Yeah.
I am most definitely living my dream, and I have a blast. And I think everybody can tell it too, because I've just always got this huge smile on my face. I put, 20 pictures of him up on Facebook every day. And, I like to share him with everybody. I feel like it was a group project because when we were going through IVF and we talked about the needles, it really became a group project because Jason was still traveling to Georgia on the weekends. And so my family would step in and give me my shots. Jason would be in Florida, or he'd be at a conference, or whatever, and a lady in our Sunday school class would give us our shots, because what I also learned is my mom's afraid of needles too. But it was definitely a group project, and I would say when you're thinking about getting into IVF or you're taking those steps, make sure that you have a village. It takes a village to raise a baby, but I think it takes a village to get pregnant too, because sometimes things don't happen the way you think they're going to, and you need to have people that you can lean on, that you can talk to and say, I'm going through this situation. I don't want everybody to know, because it is scary and it is private, and if something doesn't go right, then you don't want to have to tell a couple hundred people. You'd like to tell 2 people and then just be done, right? So we kept it really close as to who we told what was going on, and then as we were making progress and getting better news and getting results, and we started telling more people then. But get you a village of 5, 6, 7, 8 people. I remember so we transferred in February, so back the calendar up to Thanksgiving. We were at Thanksgiving with Jason's family that year, and we went to Callaway Gardens, and it was time to take our shot, and we were on a light tour. They do this beautiful light show at Callaway Gardens, and we got straight off the trolley, ran over to the car, and we were like kind of panicking because there's nowhere private to give me my shot. And so his mom and sister held up their jackets, and we got opened the car door and just stood there, and I took my shot in the parking lot at Callaway Gardens on Thanksgiving, because that's just where we were and what we needed to do at the time to make it happen. So make sure you have a good village around you that knows what's going on and that they're willing to shoot you in the butt if that's what it takes.
Well, that's great. That's really practical. And so let me end it here. How did you end up handling the needs? I mean, how did you sort of overcome your fear, or did you never really overcome your fear, but you just sort of went through it anyway and it was okay? I mean, that's really practical stuff for people to hear, because you're not the only one who's like that.
Like Jason said, Sherry really helped me, and we got a good process of distracting me and talking, and they would tell me, they would count me down when they would stick me and when they were getting ready to pull the needle out, or they would tell me how much blood they'd gotten or how much more they need, or if they were getting another vial. They would really talk me through it, and I would not look, but I would still be there. And then I also just kind of got in the mindset that I wanted Mason more than anything else in my life. And so if it took a couple hundred needles to get there, I was just going to have to sort that through my brain. And it really helped me, all that practice I had while we were going through the process with y'all, because when I got to my OBGYN, those vampires weren't as gentle as Sherry. But I already had the mental process. I already had the, state that I needed to have myself in to make sure that I was going to be able to hold it together. And, my mom went with me on some of those appointments too. But it really came to, I feel like I was having a test. Like all of those were practice runs because I ended up having a C-section. And, you know, I was also nervous about having the IV when I was in the hospital. And I was just able to have all those practice sessions to get to the final exam. And I was so glad that I had all that buildup because I was ready for it. And I was able to just kind of compartmentalize what was happening and that this was fine. And I was almost at the finish line. He was almost here. That's another thing. We didn't know if Mason was a boy or a girl. We never found out the gender, the sex, until he was born. And that was an awesome moment.
What a surprise, huh?
Yeah. The doctor asked Jason, said, "All right, Dad, you ready to find out?" And Jason popped up and looked over the curtain and said, the doctor said, "No, no, no. I didn't mean now. I just meant, are you ready?" She was just making conversation. And so a couple minutes later, and when they rolled me into the OR, they asked me if I was okay, and I said, "Yes, I am calm, I am cool, I am collected. I just gotten myself into a very good spot with God, and I just knew everything was going to be fine, and that we were coming out the other end." And so I just kind of let it go, you know. And so I'm in there, and then the doctor asked again, "All right, Dad, this time, are you ready?" And I could feel stuff. You can't feel a lot, but I could feel it happening. And Jason popped up and said, "We have a little boy." And I cried. I was thinking about it. I'm just a crybaby these days, apparently. I'm not even on the hormones anymore, and I'm still just a crybaby. But it was all wonderful. It was a great process, and I can't thank y'all enough. The whole team there is always in a great mood, always ready and excited to see us and answer any questions we have. And we would have a ton of questions. And so on my calendar for the doctor's appointment, I would have all of our questions, and we would go through all those questions as soon as we got in there, so that any fears or things that I had in my head, we would take care of those, and then whatever y'all wanted us to do.
I love it. And yeah, you're right. We do have a great team. Sherry especially is a champ. Yeah, Linda and Dr. Keenan, who you mentioned, are great. And we're all here because we're about family and about helping people build families. If you have children, you know there's no earthly gift quite like that. And we're so glad that you and Jason have been able to give birth to Mason. If you're watching on the video version, you see that Jason, as you have to do with a little baby, had to exit the interview a little early with Mason. That is okay. So we finished with just Whitney. But so happy for you guys. Congratulations again, and so many really good practical takeaways from your story, Whitney. So again, thank you so much for sharing it, and big congratulations.
Thank you. And if anybody has any questions or anything, they need a big sister through the process, I'm happy to answer any questions or just be a place to vent, a safe place to vent.
What is there a contact? Is there a piece of contact information you want to give out?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. It's Whitney Nicely East. And I'm pretty open there. After we found out we were pregnant, we did a big announcement and everything. I've been pretty open about going through IVF and what has happened. And I've had several people reach out to me. A friend that we used to hang out with a long time ago, her son and daughter-in-law are going through IVF in Charlotte, and they've reached out to me. I've got another friend that I'm just a business associate with on Facebook, and she's got a friend in Chicago. She's reached out to me. So I've been in contact with lots of women across the country going through the process, because it is kind of lonely and it is really scary. And it's nice to have somebody just even on your praying side. If I can't give them anything else, I can pray for them. I can be excited for them. I can be nervous with them, So I'm happy to share in somebody else's joy and somebody else's nervousness. I'm here for it.
That's great. Well, thanks for doing that. It's Whitney Nicely East on Facebook. If you want to look her up, she'd be a great resource, as you can tell. Again, if you want to find out more about our services, you can go to the website, southeasternfertility.org. Again, that's southeasternfertility.org. Our medical director does do free 15-minute telemedicine consultations where he can get a fresh set of eyes on your situation and hopefully give you some really good, helpful advice on what might be your best next steps. We would love to talk with you. I'm Mark Bellinger, and this has been Hope, Faith, and Infertility.